Hi, Martina.
Hi, Vika.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad to have you on here. I was telling you earlier that I don't often do these interviews anymore, but I feel like you're one of those guests that I'm just like, oh, I can pull out those interviews again to have Martina on here.
I'm so excited to be chatting with you today and
I
also
think,
with all of your audience. So, yeah.
yeah. Okay, so I feel like we have a lot to get to that I'm excited to get to because selfishly I always have whoever I want on here so that I can learn from them too. But before we do that, I just want you to introduce yourself, tell us who you are and where you're from and all that stuff because there may be a handful of people who don't know you, but I'd be shocked if most people don't.
So I'm Martina Flor. I'm a lettering artist, author, educator. I started out as a graphic designer, doing regular design jobs. And at some point I discovered lettering and letter design, and my career completely changed. I discovered in letter design something that I call like the perfect mix between, you know, illustration, this passion. I had always this passion about illustrating and drawing. And I feel it's the perfect marriage of drawing and expressiveness and expression with systems and, that come from the design world. And learning letter design allowed me to become an expert and also work with people and do working projects that I was really passionate about. So my career really flipped after that, or really changed directions after that, in a very good way. And 14 years later, I have built a business around my lettering skills, and now I have switched sides also, and I help other designers and creatives do that themselves. So learn the art of hand lettering and also build businesses around these skills.
I think it's so interesting what you just said about merging the drawing creative side with the systems because I've actually never thought of it that way. And that is so spot on for why I'm drawn to lettering. No pun intended, but kind of pun intended. But that's so spot on for me too, because that's what like I came from a design background, not graphic design, but I did interior design, lots of floor plans and drafting. And that was the part that I always really liked was the like structure of all of it.
Mm.
And I think that's why I'm into lettering and calligraphy too, because it is structured and there are rules and stuff like that, but you also can be creative with it. I feel like it's, I've been doing this for 10 years and how has that never clicked for me? I'm not sure, but you just made me think something brand new in the first 3 minutes of this interview.
Yeah, and also I think that I think many designers out there, and I speak about designers, but also creatives, they love illustration because it allows you to create work that where you can really express your personality and the things you have interest around. But oftentimes they are lacking this structure. They are lacking this structure of what should I draw next, and how should what should my style look like? And I feel that lettering and letter design gives you this structure. You cannot just draw anything. You have to draw letter forms, and these letter forms need to be readable, and they need to like fit with one another. They need to look like a family. So there is a little bit of a system there. There is a little bit. There are boundaries, and I feel like I always say that creativity like blooms in within boundaries, right? Because when you don't have boundaries, you don't know in which direction to go. But when you do know that, okay, I have certain rules, I have to work with the alphabet, this word needs to be readable, then the only, you have these boundaries and you have to work within those boundaries. And that gives you a little bit of a framework where you have a few possibilities, but not all of them, right?
Yeah, I love that. Whenever we were traveling, I always found that I would be more creative, A, because I'm traveling, but B, because I only had like one pen, one pencil, one notebook with me, and I would always just have to work within those boundaries, yeah, I love that point. But I also love how thoughtful you are about the whole process of it. And then that's what we're going to get into in a minute. I am so excited for you to talk everybody through like your process and an actual project that you've done. Um, but before we do that, I also want to make sure that everybody knows about your masterclass coming up because I feel like some people might not be able to tune for the whole video, and I want them to make sure that they know about that. So can you talk to us a little bit about that just a preview now, then we'll get into the lesson, and then we'll talk more about it afterwards.
Excellent. Yeah. So we offer, and I say we because I'm the visible face of my studio, but we are a team that is really aligned with the mission that we have of helping other designers to learn and master hand lettering and build careers around it. So, and every year we organize a 1 week workshop. This is a free workshop that is called the Lettering Roadmap, where we get together with a huge community of people like you, people that are really interested in lettering, really passionate about it. And we go through a series of workshops where we dive into the lettering industry, how you can make money with your lettering skills. Also, we help everyone involved. We help them understand in which stage of their lettering journey they are. I always say that there's 6 stages to becoming a lettering designer, and we help our all attendees understand where they're standing in their journey. And throughout these workshops, which are free, we dive into all of the things about lettering. And this is a workshop that happens just once a year. It starts on the 31st of March and it ends on the 7th of April. So you have around 4 sessions that you can join. So you can either join all of them because they all make sense with one another. But you can also join one of them and you will get a lot of value from the sessions. And you get the chance also. What I love about these sessions is that I feel that many of, I can imagine that in your community, it happens often that people feel that they're really alone in their journey, like that they're the only ones doing this, and that people around them look at them like, "What is that thing that you're doing?" But then when you join these workshops that we offer, you realize that there's a lot of people that are in on the same journey, and I think that it's great. And I know by my own experience that it's great to when you find that tribe of people who understand you and who get you and also support you in what you want to achieve, where you don't feel like this weirdo that is drawing letters because you're just like loving it. So I think that's also a big part of it, or a big element of it, that you not only come and learn and you get these insightful sessions, but also you get to network with a group of people that are really like into the industry, that are really driven, that really want to build their careers around lettering. So I would recommend you to join. And yeah, and Becca, you have all the details, so you will add them to the show notes, I guess.
Yeah, so for anybody who wants to join that, this episode is coming out on March 28th right now. And it starts, you said, the 31st. So we only have a few days to go and sign up, but people can sign up later too, right? Like if you see this in the future, you can go and check it out.
Totally recommend you to start out with the first session, which is I would say like the one where we open big, because we would talk about the lettering revolution, or what I call the lettering revolution, which is a very special time in which we are now all of us drawing lettering and have plenty of opportunities. So I would definitely recommend you to join the first session. So you have a couple of days to sign up until we start on the 31st of March. Yeah.
Okay, and so I'll put the link down in the show notes of this
Mm.
episode, but also if you ever want to go find it, you can just go to thehappyevercrafter.com/learn with Martina and it'll take you to the right place. But it's down below too, so you can just click directly to it. Okay, Martina, I feel like we could literally just sit here face to face and talk about lettering and, like you said, be
Me
with
too.
other people who do this weird thing and finally get to connect over, with someone who actually gets it. Um, but I also think that we're going to have time to talk about those things, maybe wink, wink at workshop week this year. That's
Oh
a
yeah.
that's a little teaser for people of the lineup for workshop week. But so I don't want to talk too much about all of those things because we can talk about those so much more in the future. I really want to see your rundown of the project that you worked on recently. And we like I got a little sneak peek of it before we got on here, obviously, because we need to know what we're going to talk about. But I'm excited to kind of hear your story of how this project began and how things played out and how you critique your work and your whole process. So, you can share your screen,
For
right?
sure.
And we
I'm
can
gonna go
see.
ahead and share my screen. So I wanted to share a real project, and we're gonna, of course, we're gonna dive then into what are the things that anybody in your community can look into in order to critique their own work. I think critiquing your own work is very important because it gives you this power of understanding what are the things that need improvement, what are the things that look good and should stay as they are. But it gives you this power of saying like, okay, what my next steps are. And I wanted to showcase a real project because I still remember the first time that I saw or that I met someone, and I was in the workshop of someone who was actually a professional lettering artist. And for me, this was an aha moment. It was like, okay, so he is making a living with this, really, like with this thing that I'm doing on my free time, and these things that I thought I was just crazy, and I will always do it as a hobby. And I think it's really important, or this is something that I try to do often, that I try to show my community, and in this case, Becca, your community, that you can make a living with this, and that you can really make projects that go into the real world. And that's why, like, I want to showcase a real project because I know that that moment was pivotal for me to say like, oh, okay, you can do this as a career. You can build a career with this.
Can I
So,
ask you who it was? Is it somebody whose name we would know?
oh yeah, it was Ken Barber. So that's Ken Barber is a big lettering artist from the U.S. and he's like the father of all lettering artists, I would say. So, and when I was studying, so I was born in South America. I studied graphic design, and at some point I was I studied and started to work really early. And at some point, I was very miserable at my job as a generalist graphic designer. And I decided to leave it all and invest all of my savings to sign up for a letter design course because that at the moment was the closest that I knew that had to do with lettering or drawing letter forms. And I signed up in a 1 year course in the Netherlands. So I just crossed the ocean. I moved to the Netherlands for 1 year to study in this course for letter design. And we had, I don't know, the stars aligned, and we had Ken Barber was visiting the Netherlands for some reason, and our teachers invited him to teach a workshop. And we had a workshop with him within that course. And that was the first time where I thought like, I want to do what this person is doing. And since then, yeah, I pretty much succeeded. So I
I would
just
say you're
put my,
doing it. Yeah, you're doing it.
yeah, I just put my head into that. That's why I think it's so important to have those role models or to see someone who is actually doing that thing that you want to do.
Yeah,
Because it's the first time that you say, okay, this is possible. I'm not
yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so talk to us about this project. How did it start? Just give me the whole rundown of like start to finish.
So this is a project that I created for Quotabelle. They were creating this book of quotes by remarkable women and girls, and they invited me to create the cover for that book. So I think it is really interesting to showcase a real project because a client project normally starts with a briefing. So a client will approach you with a problem. Okay, we have this book. We want to create a cover. We want it to look in a certain way. Our audience is, women and girls from a certain age. So you have there as well certain parameters. We were talking before about this having these boundaries, and they also give you these boundaries, right? So they also tell you, okay, we want to print this with golden ink or with gold foil. So you have to create a design that actually fits that briefing, which is something that I think could be helpful for people in your community because I think it's always helpful to start with the briefing, even if you're doing something for fun. I think it's helpful to have in your head a briefing of what is it that you want to create, because that gives you a little bit of boundaries. Am I gonna create a postcard? Am I gonna do a book cover or a poster or a wedding invitation for a friend? Even if it's something for fun, I think it's always helpful to start somewhere. Um, and they gave me this briefing, and they gave me, of course, the words that I needed to illustrate, which is always part of the briefing in a lettering project. And I went ahead and I created a few, a few sketches for that um, that project. So I presented four sketches of how this cover could look like. And what I normally do is that it is actually rare that I present four sketches. Normally I would do, or nowadays I would do like two or even one sometimes. And at that time I presented four. And what I normally do with these different sketches is that I present different directions. So you can see that on the right you have a more handwritten approach. So a script letter forms, which are based in handwriting. And for that, I essentially use my handwriting. So I was like using my handwriting and then like adding flourishes to that. And then on the right, you can see a more typographic approach, I would call it, where I was using more traditional letter forms. So I sent those proposals to the client, and they came back with a feedback, right? And they told me, okay, we like this version, the one that you created here. So let me just add a layer here. Um, we like this version. And we would like to change a few things. We would like to make it a little bit more controlled, add a little bit more weight so that is readable from afar. Also, I think what is interesting from creating something for a real product is that it presents you with these challenges that have to do with, okay, I'm creating a book cover, and therefore it needs to be seen or readable from far away because people will, when they access a bookstore, they need to see it on the shelves and they need to immediately recognize what it says. So it has this, it gives you those boundaries where you cannot just do anything. You have to, or you cannot just use any letter form. If you want to create something that looks handwritten, then it will need to have more weight, right? So you need to think of all this stuff, which makes it really challenging and also very interesting. So they chose this version, and they invited me to think about those things, those challenges. And then I worked on this design, which is the one we're going to talk about. So I worked on this design. Of course, the process goes through several polishing stages. So it's not like I go from that sketch to this final polish design. There's stages in between where I continue to improve that sketch and polish it and work on layers of refinement of each one of the shapes. But then those sketches turn into a digital drawing. So I work primarily on vector drawing. Becca, I don't know what your preferred technique is. If you like working on vector, or if you prefer doing more like having a handmade result, or working on raster on Procreate.
Yeah, I am a analog person.
Mm.
When Procreate came out and people were so excited about it, I got the iPad Pro, I got the Apple Pencil, I like dove into learning how to use it and stuff, and it never got me. But I also don't do a ton of client work that requires a lot of refinement. I can see why this would improve your process so much if you were doing that because you can, double tap undo. I tried to do that on paper before. I don't know if you have, but it doesn't work. So Anyway, yeah, I usually I'm like an old school tracing paper, tracing paper, tracing paper person. But I honestly wish that I liked doing it digitally because it would save me so much time.
I love it. So you use the tracing paper layers or the layers of tracing paper to like improve the drawing in iterations or
Yeah, yeah. And I think that
excellent.
that comes from my background in school. Like when I was in interior design, that's what we would do. We would have a floor plan and we would put tracing paper over it and we would move a room and we would move a wall and we would play with it that way and then put more tracing paper. And there was no option to do it this way. So that's just kind of like where I'm comfortable. But yeah.
That's amazing because I use the same. I didn't know you use the same process. So I believe your community will be familiar with that process. And I love that process because, and I also work a ton by hand. Like I do all my sketches by hand, or I always say that I like to solve most of the problems by hand. Like, because once you have sketch several times or several lettering pieces, you become really fast. Like every
Mhm.
layer is like the process becomes really efficient, and I feel like I can get to a better result very fast by hand rather than in the computer or in the iPad. So I go as far as I can with my sketch, with my hand sketch, using these layers of tracing paper as you do, Becca. And I bet that your community uses the same technique that you show them. And then something particular about my work is that I will digitize that drawing. So and the technique that I use for that is specifically vector drawing. And there's a reason for it, actually, that oftentimes when you work for as a professional lettering designer for um, specific clients, for instance, if you need to create a logotype design, you will often be required to deliver a vector drawing. So it's always useful to have this tool as a lettering artist, even if most of your work is done by hand or on Procreate, because oftentimes a lettering or at some point of their career, a lettering designer will be required to deliver a logotype in vector drawing or a certain design on a vector drawing. And for those that perhaps are not familiar with vector drawing is a drawing that allows you to scale it infinitely. So it's a drawing that you can always scale and will never lose definition. So that's the case of a logotype. For instance, you can scale it to put it on a billboard campaign on the street, and it will be sharp and beautiful. And you can scale it down to a small logotype on social media, and it will also be readable, right? Um, so yeah, so I would normally bring those sketches into my computer, and I will redraw the whole thing with vectors. Like what you see right now is a vector drawing. Yes, and I love also I would say that something I love, and I know many of my students in the beginning they fight with the digital drawing because you have to work with these points. So essentially, a vector drawing are points that are plotted in the page on the page. But then after a while, once you get the technique going, it just gives you that power over like making that perfect shape.
Mhm.
Like when you draw with a vectors, it just gives you that power of getting like the polished shape, right? Um, yeah, so that will be the next step. So to create this digital drawing, and this is usually what will be sent to the client, and then will be printed in a book cover like this one, right? So they will use that as uh, they will use the design and then they will apply the technique they want to use. So in this case, it was this gold foil, yeah, and that will be like that will create the final product.
Super cool. So what like just to go back to what lettering artists can do with their skills. So obviously like book covers and things like this. Is are book covers a popular one for you or for the average lettering artist who's doing this kind of work? Or what kinds of projects would you say that people could strive to do to use their lettering for?
So there is a big variety of projects you can work on. As a lettering artist, I always work in a big variety of projects. So I've done book covers. I've licensed work to create merchandising and products. I have created illustrations for magazines. I have created logotypes for companies and clients. I have created even tattoos. So it's temporary tattoos, these designs for temporary tattoos. So there's a wide variety of things that you can create. However, there's also lettering designers that specialize in one thing. So we have, for instance, in our community, we have Ran, and Ran uses his lettering skills specifically for logotype design. So he's a logotype designer, and he came into our community to dive into lettering, and now he is using like that skill set, which is very specific, um, to to help his clients create logotypes and logotype redesign. So he's specialized as a lettering designer into logotype design. However, you can also specialize in book covers, um, or you can do licensing. So Alana, for instance, from our community as well, she learned lettering and she started creating her portfolio. And at some point, she started building a portfolio of licensing work. So she's putting a lot of her effort into creating this portfolio of licensing artwork that other companies can purchase or license and use in their products, right? So
Hey, wait,
as a lettering
who are you talking about? Alana?
Alana Flowers. You will find
Yeah.
her. Yeah,
She was a workshop week instructor a few years ago, actually.
amazing. So yeah, so Alana, yes, and Alana, you will find her also online. She has a YouTube channel as well, and she also shares some of her knowledge online. So you can also, as a lettering artist, you can also share that with other people. I always speak about this traditional and non-traditional work that you can do as a lettering artist. You know, when you ask someone about like what is the work that they can do with their skills, they normally think of like, okay, client work, right? Or they think, okay, I need to find clients. However, you can do a lot of other things. You can build online shops. You can create products. You can teach workshops. You that within the traditional ways of monetizing your skills. But then you can also teach online, sell digital products, brushes. We have, I believe you may know her, Vera Dramanovsky.
Mhm.
I bet your community follows her on social media. She does this very whimsical and decorative lettering pieces. And Vera has this very unique style, and she creates custom brushes for her work. Um, so to create certain patterns and stuff, and her community started to ask her like, hey, how did you do that? And then she realized like, well, I have my own brush. I created my own brush. And at some point she started selling that brush, right? So she started commercializing a tool that she was using for her own work. So you can also sell the tools that you already use. You can coach other lettering artists, right? There's so many ways in which you can monetize your skills if you start thinking outside the box of like client work, which I think for many it may be also like even freeing, because oftentimes it feels very overwhelming or intimidating to say like, okay, I need to start from scratch finding clients, right? Where do I go? But if you think about the fact that you can also monetize your skills in other ways, then yeah, the world is, you know, there's a world of possibilities. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the fact that you and I are sitting here, like both of us have stories like that where we started with something totally different and it just kind of snowballed and changed. And, as you do things, you learn what you like and what you don't like, and then you just start
Absolutely.
running with them and, learning more and more. Um, okay, well, again, I feel like we could talk forever and ever about this kind of stuff, but I just have one last, like, main question for you before we talk a little bit more about where people can find you and learn more from you and stuff. And that is if you were a beginner letterer, let's say you were still doing graphic design and you decided today that you wanted to learn how to do lettering, um, where would you start?
Ooh, I love this question. So I will share things that helped me when I was starting. Um, so number one thing is make lettering your focus. And when I say this is like, I think something great about discovering a craft that you're interested in and learning more about it is that it gives you a lens. I feel that what happens when someone learns lettering, and I had this experience myself, but also with my students, that suddenly they change the lens through which they see the world, like, and for instance, when I travel, I'm constantly looking up like at the facades of buildings and like looking for vernacular letters, signs and things that I want to photograph. So I think this is a great way to start, a place to start. Like make lettering your focus. Try to look at the world through the lens of letter forms and try to look for letter forms all around you. We are surrounded by letter forms. So as you walk down the streets, instead of, looking at your phone, just look up, look at things that interest you, take pictures, start building that library of letter forms. I think that's like one of the biggest, or like the one thing that had the biggest impact on developing my style is that early on I started keeping that library of letter forms in my phone. So I was taking pictures, I was, saving that in a folder inside my phone, and that really shaped the way I draw letter forms as well. So that step number one. Step number two, draw often. Find any excuse that you may find to draw letter forms. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be beautiful. It just needs to be, right? Um, and I always recommend people to put themselves the task of creating something instead of like just practicing and doing like doodles or sketches that never see the light, that they set themselves the goal of like, okay, this week I'm gonna create this postcard and I'm gonna give it to someone. Next week I'm gonna do this other thing, and you just put yourself projects, and that are like you create projects instead of just practicing and just practicing like your sketches always like are hidden somewhere in a drawer and never shared on social media or never see the light. So I think that's also important that you instead of practice you start making stuff. You start creating small pieces of lettering that you start and finish. Um, and the other thing is just find people that are also with you in this. Connect with someone, find a friend that is also interested in this. Find a community online, find an in-person community as well that are on the same path. I remember that when I moved to Berlin, so I did this big jump of going from Argentina, which is where I was born, to the Netherlands to study. And then I moved to Berlin to launch my career as a lettering artist. And I didn't know anybody in Berlin. I didn't speak the language as well, so I had no idea. I was like a complete yeah, like I was new to the city. But one good thing I did at that time is that I joined a community meeting here that it was called Tipo Stammtisch, which still happens. And what was great about that is that everybody in this meeting, it was a meetup of like 30 designers, and everybody in this meeting, they were all making a living with letter design in some way or another. And that was also a pivotal moment for me because I thought like, whoa, look at all these people. They're all doing what I want to do. So if they can do it, I can do it as well. And that also really helped me to stay on track and to, build my career as a lettering artist. So those are the three things. Make lettering your focus, draw often, and find your people.
I love that you could have I could have asked you that question and you could have been like, well, you should start with my course or you should start with my masterclass. But instead you took it to the real like inspiration back down to bare bones, which I love that. I love that about you, that you can tell that you're so passionate about it and you really just want people to like get passionate with you.
Yeah, I'm also passionate about teaching and also bringing people into my world. I definitely passionate about this, but I know that you can also get started. I want people to get started right away because if you put so many things like, well, you have to find the course and you have to find the place where you need to, or you need to move cities or whatever, like then you will never get started. But
Yeah.
it's so easy, really. Just these small tweaks can make a lot of difference.
hmm Okay. Well, and I mean, I'll do the shameless plug for you because now people don't actually have to search for the course. They can just go jump into yours because it's free and it starts in like, what is it, 3 days?
Yeah, in 3 days.
Um, so everything's going to be in the show notes. People can find it if they want to go take the free master class with you, but also the happyevercrafter.com/learn with Martina if you want to get into that. And obviously, I mean, they can follow you on Instagram. What's your Instagram handle for them?
Is Martina Flor.
There you go. I'll put that down below also. But I thank you so much for coming on. It feels like I've been doing interviews with artists for so long, and I feel like you should have been on here so long ago. So it makes so much sense to maybe bring back some interviews now and kick it off with you. You've inspired me. I feel like I need to get out some pens today and just draw.
Yeah, I'm also inspired, Becca, and I think it's so great that we are finally having a conversation. I also wonder why we never had this conversation before, so I'm glad that we finally did it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Martina, I will, again, everything will be in the show notes for everybody. I'm sure people will go and find you in your masterclass and get even more inspired. And I look forward to seeing what everybody creates because I know that there'll be some magic coming out of there. But I guess until next time, and maybe until June, wink, wink. My audience knows what I'm talking about when I do that. Um, it's been wonderful chatting, and I know we'll talk again soon. But thank you so much for coming on and dropping all of those little tidbits of wisdom for everybody.
Thank you, Becca, and thank you everybody for tuning in.
Okay, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye bye.